Any corrections, additions? Motion to approve from Josh? Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Greg. Hunter, do you want to do the roll call?
I can do the roll call, yes. Sharon, how do you vote?
Approve.
Carol, how do you vote?
Approve.
And Donna, how do you vote?
Approve.
All right, it is unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. I mistakenly said yesterday when I sent the email out that we had a speaker today. We do not. We had tried, but we do not. We have a speaker joining us in March. So that's a good thing because we do have a good bit to discuss as we prep for February. As part of our December meeting, we decided as a group to do a 3-hour planning retreat on our meeting date in February. We do not have a location yet, but we're working on that. I wanted to kind of tee that up by first reminding us of our purpose. I know that I do, and I think we all do, sort of slip into the nebulous zone of what it is we do and how we engage, what our purpose is. And so we're an advisory group to City Council. That's the reason we were created. That's our charter as it is set under the mayor's office and under City Council. And so as individuals, we all were selected, excuse me, and appointed to this committee to bring insight and awareness from our various activities, groups that we're members of, our neighborhoods, our own personal circles, to shed light on policy changes, opportunities for improvement, feedback, and really be that voice and that group of expertise as we serve in that advisory capacity. So I kind of want this to be our guiding principle as we design and go into our February retreat. You know, some of the things that we do in that advisory role, we review ordinances and policies, we comment on plans and help prioritize, you know, the bike plan, the walkable Winston-Salem plan, and then other opportunities as they arise. We do that by group discussion and then consensus building among our group, and then sharing those recommendations through city staff so that they can submit them to the appropriate channels. But then also we need to work on building relationships with the city council members and some of their subcommittees, you know, like public works and other committees. The liaison role, I think, is the piece that's really fuzzy. We are already liaisons because we are active and engaged community members. You know, we all have workplaces, we all have friend groups, we all have neighborhoods that we're part of, faith groups, walking, running, whatever it is that we do that brought us to this, that highlights our interest in what we do related to micromobility, walking, biking, etc. So we don't really have to get fancy and try to build out a liaison plan. I think we need to leverage the groups we're already part of and be a little bit more intentional about what that looks like. So that will be part of our communications dialogue and discussion. At the same time, there are also probably some groups that aren't represented that we will need to map out some more strategic engagement with. We might all have local bike shops, but I know that most of the time when I go into my local bike shop, I get distracted right away because they're silly and funny and they're talking about 10 million other things, or, you know, something comes up after I leave and they don't really do email. They don't really do some of those kinds of things. So we will need to build out an intentional planning process on what active liaisoning looks like. But just again, to sort of set that guiding principle, our primary role is advisory committee to the city council. In order to advise with expertise, we draw on our active engagement and liaisoning with various community groups and entities across the community. Does that make sense? Hey, Michael.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you? I was just kind of teeing up our sort of a guiding principle as we talk about the February retreat. Reminder to myself and the committee of our primary purpose as an advisory committee to city council, and then the ways that we appropriately advise and where that expertise and knowledge comes from is sort of the liaison piece that we'll talk about a little more in depth. As we work on our agenda for that February retreat, and I know I did want to just poll again and see if there were any other conflicts. We know that Kim will not be with us that day. She's got a work conflict and she's going to miss our meetings through March, and then she'll be back with us. She is going to engage in other discussion and can help with some of the planning and input. Any other known conflicts at this time from those here, other than Donna's birthday?
With me, just Winston-Salem Forsyth County School gets out half day that day, so I might just have to leave.
Okay. Okay. They get out at noon or before, depending on. Okay. Good to know. And Joshua, we know that you will probably be late because you've got the healthcare CEO panel that morning. Okay, so we still don't have a location for anyone who missed that coming in. We will get that out to you soon. We're working on finalizing that. Just kind of agenda. I think one of the things, and Carol, you may know this off the top of your head, but we want to go back and review the conversations that were held with other BPAC or similar organizations in the state. I think the first question is, are they also advisory committees to their city councils? And if so, how they engage. I think another thing that I'd love to see, this is where I'm getting into the volunteer roles on what we need to look at before we meet in February. We need to go back and review our previous conversations, and that feels like it's been a long time ago. It really has. It's been a year. We need to look at some of the other Winston-Salem advisory committees and maybe reach out and have conversations with them about how they engage with their representatives and working committees under city council to get some ideas that we could leverage in our committee. We need to go back and review our previous work plan, which I have said multiple times that I'm getting out to you, and I haven't yet, but I will do, just so you don't have to dig back and find it as well. And then on the communications side, and I prefer communications over marketing, because this is, again, that liaison piece, what that looks like, how that looks like, and yes, Joshua.
Well, no, I just wanted to throw something out there, and I hope this is the proper time, about that February 8th. One, I was wondering, you talked about that liaison, that conduit with the city council. Do we know, obviously I know the commissioners better than I know the city council, but I know some of them. Do we have any champions in the city council who are bikers or walkers, or just saying that because I've seen there's a pretty prominent Wake County, Sig Hutchins, I think is his name. Hutchinson, he's like city county, maybe he's the county commissioner, so a little different, but big champion for walking and biking. I'm LinkedIn friends with him, and he's all the time putting stuff about that. And then if we had that champion, would that be cool if they could maybe have an invitation to drop in on February 8th, if that's appropriate? Just never hurts to have those, champions and advocates, and that can, yeah. Also, I know downtown, who is this? Theo, what's his name? Theo, I bet,
Jason.
Or there's a gentleman that's leaving. He was over tourism. Geiger.
Oh, Rich.
Richard.
Yeah, just those would be, I think, good to plug in there, because you just think about how that. I mean, I'm sure there's data that shows that people are going to come here, move here, or just come for vacation because of opportunities. So that's my 2 cents.
No, I think that's perfect. And you reminded me, probably 2 years ago, Michael and I had a conversation with Visit Winston-Salem. We do have, there is if he's still there, I'd have to go back and look, someone who was part of their marketing team who was very active with Winston-Salem cycling advocacy, really interested in supporting our work. We connected with them originally to help get word out about the bike-friendly business designation and to try to get more folks involved. And same with Jason Thiel with the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership. Jason gave indication that he was excited to help. He's kind of excited to help and engage in most everything. I think what we ran into was how and what that looks like. So I think that definitely needs to be part of our conversation, those 2 groups specifically. As far as city council members who are our big advocates, Jeff McIntosh is who we get directed to because of he chairs the Public Works Committee. And he and I have emailed, we're Facebook connected and we've emailed back and forth, that kind of thing. Kevin Mundy, though, is a background advocate for us. Now, he will defer to Jeff, but he keeps his eyes and ears on other communities, is helpful. And we've been friends for a really long time. And he helps plug my name to Jeff, but Jeff is who we get deferred to. I think we need to continue having those conversations, and I'm kind of working your comment in backwards order. Mentioning inviting them to drop in, that came up with Carol and Matthew and I when we had the officers meeting last week as well. Here's where we landed on that, and you guys feel free to chime in on what you think. I think it's great to offer them an open invitation, and if they, I think that we should extend an open invitation to anyone who wants to drop in. I think that would be great. We would also then love to have them intentionally attend a meeting, maybe in March, or get on their calendar to present to Public Works, where we do a highlighted accomplishments and then also our work plan that we've established for 2023-24 and share that with them in a focused and intentional way. But yes, all of that needs to happen. We really need to build those relationships. And get more visibility. I think, I don't want to take our whole time, but one of the things that I think we need that happens, that I see happening, is leaders, when they hear bicycling, I think the image that comes to mind is fully kitted up, high-end bike on the roads. And that is great. That is one part of bicycling, but the part that I think has touched our committee and that we kind of set as our vetting and mission when we were looking at the walkable Winston-Salem plan, when we were looking at the bike plan and setting those priorities, is transportation, active mobility, other types of uses, the scooters, all of these other things that come after the bicycle part of our name. And so I think we need to have those conversations and continue to voice that in order to really broaden that perception. So it's not just a nice pat on the back for people who have the luxury of cycling for exercise.
Sharon, this is Greg. I was also going to mention that maybe Dan Bessie, he's now a county commissioner, and that he was very, very strong on bike and ped projects and funding and support when he was on city council. And while I think he would be a natural to at least invite, because he will probably want to have maybe some, or share some perspective from the county, I guess, not only other folks that might come along, but what the county commission is maybe feeling. I know he's just started and so forth, but he has enough background and has talked to enough people and so forth to maybe start to share that perspective and getting that from the county commission. So I would try to invite him if that is all possible.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I don't know if I've ever met Dan in person, but we are friends and have been connected for a long time. We're not really friends, whatever that word is that Facebook has taught us to use differently. I think Dan should be on our list and maybe be a great person to reach out to as we define this, what liaison will look like, liaising. He could offer great advice on how we do move the needle on engaging with city council members, since he has been in that seat and was able to do a lot and is well known. I think he'd be a great advisor to our group. That's a good reminder. Thank you. He's super active in the social media circles with the greenways and other things. I appreciate that he intentionally visits different greenways and we'll do a picture and explanation of that greenway when he and his wife go out and run and walk. So good reminder. For planning purposes, if we could have a couple of folks volunteer to go back and review those conversations that were held with other BPACs to see if there's anything we want to bring to the table as we plan. A couple of folks volunteer, or maybe one person volunteer to maybe have a conversation with Dan or have a conversation with another committee leader, another advisory committee under the city of Winston-Salem to get some input on how to further our mission. That would be great. Anything else you can think of that? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I just, did you say you're asking for volunteers? If so, I'd volunteer to reach out to Dan Bessie and just, again, just make him aware of obviously I'm sure he knows about the committee, but this would be good since he's new to the county. Mm-hmm. And then is it okay to offer to say, hey, February 8th, we're doing this? Is that, or?
Obviously I have a little hesitation towards that. I don't want to distract from our purpose. So maybe we could time that. So if he wanted to come in the beginning, say between 9 and 9:30 and introduce himself. I think the main thing we'd like for him to do is advise us on how we better advise city council, like how we should navigate the politics, how we should try to connect what works and what doesn't from the city council member perspective, that kind of thing. If he could offer anything, and if he wants to come speak to us, if we could know that and plan him in to a time slot, that would be great. But otherwise, just whatever you can pick his brain over to get some advice would be helpful.
Okay.
I guess one thing that I just thinking is each individual council member, I think, really gets their attention is when you're talking about their ward. I don't know.
Their ward.
Yeah, like, and maybe, I don't know if they're that kind of just focused specifically, or if they're looking at the whole picture collectively. I know they are, but I think their interests truly lie in their wards. I just say that as I'm thinking, like, how do we navigate this, and how do we get their attention? So I think that was just the first thing that popped up.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I have found that frustrating, when there have been conversations in the social media space about a particular issue where one tries to deflect to the other because it's not in my ward. It can be a handoff. But I think the reverse of that is talking about specific needs and how we bring those together for the good of the greater community and the health of the greater community could be a really, really strong point for us to leverage. So that's a good reminder. And I don't know, I don't know those off the top of my head. I know a couple of them. I know my person, and that, I know one of the East Winston, but I don't know where those lines are, and I don't know how they correlate.
Well, that just brings the thought, like, we could all, they have that map on the city website, and even if we target, we look at specific projects, and then we just say, hey, that's when we reach out to those individual councilmen people and just say, this is what we're thinking about. And if we're doing that and only targeting those specific conversations for those specific councilmen, once we kind of have maybe touched base with all of them, then we can kind of collectively say, hey, these are how they link together. And, this greenway runs from your ward to your ward, and we're trying to benefit the whole thing. And then, so I don't know, those are just thoughts that kind of come to mind.
No, I think that's perfect. I think that's a great idea.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think Michael was spot on about the wards. I mean, I've heard that. Yeah, it's very, your ward that happens a lot. I mean, you're obviously advocating for your constituents, but that might be a time where we get that person from that ward, and if it's not Kevin or Jeff McIntosh's ward, maybe then we bring, them in too. There are because they are champions, but yeah, it's making sausage.
It is.
Yeah. I sometimes sit on the city council board meetings and listen to them. So Michael, to your point, it's they talk about the construction projects that are going on in the different wards and the housing, and a lot of the concerns that some of the neighbors have in the communities next to or within the areas where there's going to be these construction projects is traffic, safety for their children. And it really, when you said that, it's like, wow, that really ties into almost maybe possibly having even that contractor run through us a little bit about, or we consult some way with city council around even some of those issues. So I think that construction piece, because that's what usually comes up. We're concerned about the kids being able to walk and ride their bikes, and because the traffic patterns that are going to be created as a result of this construction in the different wards. And there are some that have some major projects that are coming up. The Northwest ward in particular. And so you just sparked a really great area to really impact.
That's a great point, Donna. I'm making myself a note to add that in. We've talked about safety, and I think that's been a little more obvious in just bicycle and pedestrian safety concerns. long-term safety, but those short-term safety impacts, protected sidewalks, and how those get communicated when there's a closure or alternate routes. And we had an issue before Christmas, maybe before Thanksgiving, where part of Salem Creek Greenway was closed, but the signs weren't really clear on where the alternate route was, that kind of thing. And having us be able to provide input that maybe there's a better way, or visibility, or all of that, and get neighborhood engagement and involvement for short-term safety needs as well. And I think that conversation around having some input with construction plans and communication with contractors has come up before as well. So I'm making a note on that. Good call.
Based on what Donna just said, I think Annette Scipio might be our biggest advocate, because she is in that Northwest Ward, and I've seen some of the comments written in the paper that she has made. So I think that she would be a great advocate for us when it comes to safety and different forms of transportation access for individuals.
Yeah, and that conversation around expanding the understanding of bicycle, pedestrian, active mobility committee is important with her too.
Yeah.
She's kind of who I had in mind when I was mentioning that, just from observing a public works conversation. Okay. So just if we break this down into very simple buckets, we have sort of our role as an advisory committee and what that looks like, and how we create those relationships and provide advice. Communications, visibility, and community liaison roles. Is there any other obvious large bucket that we should consider going forward? I think part of the advising will also be, you know, how and when we review ordinances and policies and suggest changes. It's how we work with the city council and subcommittees to provide input, and how we engage with, you know, staff and other people. ArcGIS surveys and US DOT and state DOT, whatever those opportunities are that come to us, and how we engage. Anything else? Should we keep it simple with just the two main buckets? We have advisory and then liaison. Okay. So we have Josh will reach out and have a conversation with Dan Bessie. We have one or two people who could look back through those BPAC conversations, the notes that we have to draw. Carol?
Yeah. Not to volunteer someone, but Amy read those pretty thoroughly and came back to me with some questions. So when she gets back in the country, I can probably reach out to her, and she and I can look those together.
Okay. Okay. Michael, do you mind doing a little recon work with Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership and Visit Winston-Salem to see if what might be on their radar and how they'd like us to bring information to them?
Yeah. So to be a little bit more specific, sorry, I absolutely can do that. When you say what's on their radar, what do you mean exactly?
If they, well, with this, with Visit Winston-Salem, one of the things they were doing at the time we spoke with them was trying to promote outdoor activities in during COVID. So to draw visitors to Winston-Salem, you know, because we had outdoor activities to offer, which made sense for them. I think, and our ask of them was to engage the hotels and businesses, restaurant roundtable, others, to try to get them on board with the bike-friendly business certifications. So it might be just an open note to say, hey, we know you have some staffing changes. Do you have any specific opportunities coming up? Is there anything you're hearing from those groups that we might offer some advice on, that kind of thing?
Okay.
And kind of the same conversation with Jason and the partnership, like what's going on with downtown plan? Is there any way the bike committee could review that plan and provide specific input? Here's what we do with city council. We'd love to bring that to you as well before they finalize that.
Okay.
Thank you. Donna, if you have additional thoughts on, or could even just package what you just said out loud into some thinking points for us to consider, that would be great. I love knowing that you sit in on those meetings once in a while. That will be part of our conversation at the retreat, is to see who else actively participates or attends those meetings, and maybe even designate a couple of members to be on point for that. So any further thoughts you have around what you see and observe at the city council meetings themselves and around that specific safety conversation that you just shared would be great. And if we could get all of this back in hand 2 weeks from today so that we could package it into the agenda, that would be awesome from everyone.
Okay. Will do.
Thank you. What have I left out? I want to give time. I'm looking at the clock and I want to make sure we have time for Hunter to run through the micromobility update before we close out. Anything I'm missing?
Sharon, I like that you have bucketed it into big buckets. And that it can have a lot of different sub points under it. I'm looking back at the work program that we put together a couple of years ago to make sure that those buckets fit under those, because I don't think that we want to steer too far away from what we were doing before. Somehow they all need to be wrapped together so it looks like we're continuing forward progress. So as I look at those, the first one was elevation of city of Winston-Salem to bike friendly. That kind of falls under advisory and community relations. Achieve walk friendly community designation, that too falls under those two categories. Increase awareness and communication of pedestrian laws definitely falls under the two that we've just done. And there's another one. Oh, there it is. Explore rail trail opportunities. So yeah, I think that this is a good plan.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm excited. I think this will give us a time to review that other work plan and some of the things we've done over the past 2 years. I want to, we've talked about creating our accomplishments list so that we have something to share with these city council members and other folks to say, here's what we have done and here's what we're doing, over the next 2 years. Anything else you think of, just shoot us a note between now and, let me give an actual date on the calendar, January 25th. Any thoughts you have, questions you have that we should include in the agenda or planning for the retreat, send them to Carol and myself. You can copy Matthew and Hunter by January 25th. Okay, thank you all. Hunter, I am turning it over to you now to go through the micromobility update. Matthew shared this at the Public Works Committee last night. I will be honest, I have not looked at the slides. So I'm going to be seeing them through Hunter today. When I saw that it was an information item only, I let my brain relax on that one. So we'll add this into our discussion though February, because I think there are opportunities to take a deeper dive into this policy and offer some suggestions. Hunter, are you gonna do? Hang on, I gotta.
Yep, I'm happy to start screen sharing if you're
Yep.
okay with that.
Go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Sharon. As you mentioned, we're going to discuss the changes to the shared micromobility ordinance that Matthew proposed to Public Works Committee last night. Again, he only presented it as information, so there is plenty of time for BPAC to get its suggestions in, voice support or opposition to anything in here, as well as address any additional issues that might not even be addressed in this presentation today. So with that, I guess I'll get into the next slide. So a little bit of background and reason why the micromobility ordinance is being updated in the first place is that it hasn't been updated since it was originally adopted in 2019. And now that we're entering what would be our 5th year of the shared micromobility program in Winston-Salem, and experience from 3 total years of micromobility operations, we know that there are some things that we can adjust with the ordinance to just make it more competitive with what other peer communities are doing, as well as address changes that are going on in the micromobility sector right now. Just to give you a brief profile of what scootering looks like in Winston-Salem over the last few years, we're averaging around 26,000 trips per year, equating to about 32,000 miles. So a little over a mile per trip. In fact, 1.3 miles per trip is the average trip that folks are taking on scooters. And those trips last about 24 minutes long. And overall, as a program, we see pretty low rates of complaints from the public. And that's because SPIN and the micromobility partners that we've had have been pretty proactive at addressing illegal parking before it can even escalate to the point of a public complaint, for example. And that's what those numbers down there really reflect, is that on average, we're getting about 6 complaints of illegal parking per month. And we're at the same time getting about 14 notifications from SPIN per month that they got ahead of the ball and removed a sidewalk, removed a scooter from a place that it wasn't supposed to be parked, for example. A little bit more discussion on what scooters look like, the climate for scooters looks like in Winston-Salem. We recently worked with SPIN to deploy a survey on the SPIN platform that gave folks, I believe, $5 to $10 in free ride credits if they shared with us their experience, a little bit about their ride. And so what we got from that was insight on a few different questions, and I'll walk through those now. The first is, when did you decide to take the scooter for this trip? As you can see, about 2/3 of respondents said that they decided at spur of the moment. So what we're really seeing is that people are seeing that a scooter is available on the street, and they're seeing that it's going to take them from point A to point B a little bit faster, or maybe it's a fun thing for people to do in downtown. And so there's not a whole lot of planning that goes on ahead of time. That being said, there's about 18% of people who plan it shortly before the trip. Maybe they live downtown or near downtown, and they can open up the app and see what scooters are available and walk to that and then plan what trip they're doing from there. And then some people plan even further out that day or in the days before, around 14%. But generally, we're seeing that people are deciding this in the moment. And so that, I think, speaks to the convenience of micromobility and the dockless scooters. We have gotten some more feedback about where people take them. For the most part, people are taking them out and about. They're circulating through downtown. There may not be a specific destination in mind. We see that recreation is one of the top responses. That being said, the next highest is that they want to take it to social or entertainment related events downtown. And a good portion of people take it to work or to school or to work related meetings. And those numbers kind of mesh with what we've seen. Another survey question that wasn't included in this presentation that I could share a little bit more on is we wanted to find out what kind of trips these scooters are replacing. So when people take a scooter from A to B, would they have walked? Would they have taken a private car? Would they have taken a ride share, transit, whatever it may be? And we are seeing that most of the time this is replacing walking trips. So it's just making people, getting people from A to B faster than they would if they were to ordinarily walk it. But about 20% of people report that they would have taken a private car instead. And so that's us taking vehicles off of the road through the scooter program in a sense. And about 5% of people report that they wouldn't have taken the trip at all. So from the standpoint of getting people downtown and traveling around and exploring what things there are to do, the scooters definitely address that as well. So next we'll move on to why people choose e-scooters for their trips. Overwhelmingly, we get responses that it's fun and it's the fastest option. It does address for some people the fact that they do not own a car, or the fact that transit may not be a convenient enough option for them. So into the changes that Matthew had proposed to Public Works last night. The first thing that we're going to change or propose to change is the nightly pickup requirement. Right now, this isn't really happening because this is not really capacity or something that Spin is doing in any other market, especially in the southern region. None of the cities that Spin operates in, that's 19 total markets, require nightly pickup. And so what we propose to do is what's kind of ongoing now, which is to allow devices to remain in the public right-of-way, but are deactivated after hours. So as you know, the current hours end around 9 p.m. That puts a stop to all operations on scooters, and they can remotely lock it. What that would require, though, is an update of the definition of the word abandon. Something with the ordinance would require us to somewhat loosen the definition of what abandon would mean on Spin's end if we're now allowing them to leave scooters overnight. The next change is to operating hours, though. In fact, right now we operate from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. or allow Spin to operate from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. We're proposing to change that from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. The reason being that we give a little bit more flexibility to folks downtown who may work in restaurants that close a little bit later or who want a more convenient opportunity to get around. This is consistent with what Raleigh is doing. They operate from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. And Durham actually operates 24/7. The reason that Matthew provided to me for the proposal of 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. is it kind of serves that compromise. It still prevents maybe people from operating scooters at what would be generally unsafe hours, low visibility hours, but still respects the fact that some folks may use this as a commuting tool, and expanding it a little bit later in the night helps them to achieve that.
Hunter?
Sure.
Sorry, 1 second. I see Josh had a hand up question on that conversation.
Yeah. I was just curious, just in general. I mean, I can understand, I guess, why you wouldn't have it 24/7. And I'd imagine this is a city council decision, I guess. Is that a city council decision? Because if you're working or if you're at, I mean, even just going to some places downtown, 11 o'clock could be pretty early. I would imagine, I don't know. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was time limits on it. And is that,
So, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was surprised by that, and especially by 9, I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, that's That's very restrictive. And I'd be honest, even 11 could be restrictive. I'm just thinking about the nightlife and Ramcat, and I don't even know Fiddly. I mean, I don't even know the names of all the places downtown. But just if you're working there, you're going there, yeah, need a way home.
That's a good point. And it's definitely something that the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee can advise on. You did mention that this does have to go through City Council. That's still probably a few months out because this was just presented kind of as a working information item for Public Works first. So this could be an item where if the BPAC is supportive of expanded hours beyond 11 p.m., that could be something that you advise on. The other thing that I would say is I think the concern was to expand hours a little bit, but to also prevent potentially unsafe operation of scooters associated with the downtown nightlife. So again, want to prevent folks from potentially riding home under the influence on a scooter and prevent potentially unsafe operation. So I think the proposal as is tried to meet those two interests kind of in the middle. But it is certainly something that BPAC can suggest to change. Any other questions?
I do have one. How much is this? I mean, I have no idea. What does it cost to ride these scooters? I know you get you pay to get so many minutes, but if I'm going to go 15 minutes, is it $5, 20? Anybody?
If you're riding for a few miles, it can get up to about $20. But if you're doing about a mile or so, the average trip, I believe they're coming under 10 for sure.
Okay.
But I can get you information on specific rates as well.
I was just curious.
Could we get that information ahead of the February retreat?
Yes, I can definitely get you information on current rates for scooters, and it's a per minute fee, so it's expressed in cents per minute. So I can get you that information.
Okay, thanks.
The next change proposal would be a response time for illegal parking. Currently, our ordinance suggests 2 hours, regardless of time of day or day of week. For practical purposes, specifically related to operations on weekends or holidays, we have decided to change or propose a change to that would allow for response time to be within 2 hours between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So roughly those operational hours, Monday through Friday. That respects the level of staffing that SPIN may have in this area. Next day, as soon as practicable, if reported on the weekend or holiday. And finally, operator shall provide city with a 24/7 point of contact and respond to city requests within 1 hour. That is, if a situation of illegal parking were to escalate to the level of a complaint to CityLink or a city official and it needed to be addressed faster, the establishment of that 24/7 point of contact would help ease that response. And so they would be required to respond within 1 hour. Durham and Raleigh currently operate as proposed. So those 3 bullet points are exactly what you'll see in Durham and Raleigh's ordinance as well. Local office requirement. We're the only city in the Southern market and for SPIN that requires a local office. And so to be competitive, we have decided to eliminate the local office requirement. Currently, we have a local office that I believe operates in a warehouse on Cherry Street from 8 to 5 p.m. It's required to be staffed, but given staffing challenges with SPIN and the fact that other cities do not require this, was determined to be proposed for elimination. The next one is sidewalk riding detection requirement. The city originally required that each electric stand-up scooter must be able to recognize and implement enforcement mechanisms to prohibit sidewalk riding. Even back then, when scooters weren't as far along, this detection requirement, this detection equipment did not really exist. And while it's definitely an emerging technology and different vendors have different capacities, we've decided to eliminate the requirement entirely. And something that we evaluate actually when vendors come in with their applications of, hey, we want to operate in the city of Winston-Salem, is how far along are they on certain illegal parking or sidewalk riding detection software. And so that does guide our decision when, eventually permits are awarded. But overall, in terms of the ordinance, because it's still emerging technology, it doesn't really make sense to have it in the ordinance right now. Finally, we want to look at dockless bicycles regulation. The ordinance does not really provide for the management of dockless bicycles in our system. And because SPIN plans to add about 50 dockless e-bikes to the system, we propose to add a restriction of deployment and parking of dockless bicycles in Old Salem and city parking decks. That's the same policy that applies to scooters, particularly for operations in Old Salem and city parking decks, and just allows us to formally regulate dockless e-bikes as part of the shared micromobility system. Before we dive into questions, and I'll be happy to take any of those, Matthew wanted me to pass on a couple of notes from yesterday's presentation. One of the most important things from that is probably one of the Public Works members was interested in whether or not we would modify the micromobility ordinance to allow for operation of scooters on greenways. Matthew advised that that would be something that he'd like the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee to advise on. And so that could be an item to discuss within the work plan and within future, advising on micromobility, that you determine what level of restriction you would like to have for micromobility vehicles on our greenways. As you know, right now, scooters are prohibited on greenways, but you may also see that scooters that are privately owned are operating on greenways if you're just biking or walking around town and using the greenways there. So this could be certainly a point of discussion, and because it was raised at Public Works, I also wanted to raise it to you. But with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I would just, sorry, we would definitely make this as sort of a top priority in our work group review of ordinances. My question is, was there a date that Matthew had in mind that he'd like us to review and provide input by?
Not a specific date at this point, but I would suggest getting it on the agenda within the next 2 meetings in order to make an impact and to be able to submit something to advise council on.
Great, thank you. Sorry, Carol, didn't mean to cut you off.
Hunter, based on the Greenway operation, do we know how Durham and Raleigh treat those?
I do not offhand.
Just a quick thought off the top of my head, if we are really thinking that these are alternative transportation and thinking about the extension of the Long Branch Trail, I could definitely see how we should make them available on the Greenway, but that's just a quick thought because we're opening that up for people to have alternative transportations to the health center, to the colleges, to employment, and those scooters could provide that.
Could we ask for a volunteer, maybe Greg, if you have time to look at the Durham and Raleigh ordinances to see what they state?
As far as access on greenways, is that what you mean, or riding on greenways?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Great, thank you.
One other thought or question, which doesn't is not applied to what I see in what was presented, but it did come to my mind when Josh asked the question about the fees. I think that a lot of cities are starting to provide rebates or discounts for individuals in low income categories. And is that something that we provide for our scooters? And should we provide for our scooters to allow people to transport to work and to play things like that?
Yeah, Matthew shared that was part of the vetting process with choosing Spin as a vendor. Go ahead.
That's correct. And I can get you more specific information after this meeting as to what the benefits are. But basically what is proposed is if a trip starts in an equity area, it will receive a certain discount. And then there are certain, I believe, other qualifications that a user could report as far as financial need go, that can also affect the price and accessibility of scooters as well. But I'll get to you on the specifics of what the Spin program offers. But Sharon's absolutely right that when we had the few vendors come in this past summer for evaluation on which permits we would award for operation, one of the things we required was how do you address transportation equity and make it accessible to folks with less money.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That's actually been one of the things that I share when people criticize the scooters that folks are not aware of, is that it offers an alternate means of transportation for members of low resource communities. And I find that really changes the perception quickly, and sort of turns on a light bulb for folks who are, just criticizing kids, college kids raging around on scooters all over downtown. That, actually they do a lot more than that. They can be fun, but they also offer a way for people to get around who may not be able to afford other things. Okay.
One thing that I love that I just heard you just saying that there's already kind of built-in discounts for low equity areas, which that's awesome. Another thing, you mentioned it kind of earlier, to get the feedback that you do have the incentives, that could be an additional layer. Like, here are these opportunities for incentives to receive feedback for additional discounts. So you're getting that buy-in, and it could make it so much more accessible with a buy-in, which generates great feedback and can really be purposeful and enhance just the system as a whole. So yeah, I think and the fact that it's all built in is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. I didn't know that it was automatic, that they started, that the discount started automatically based on the start place of the ride. Okay, we have just 2 minutes left. I have a question that might be primarily for Michael. We came across a notification to sign up for helmet distribution. Is there any benefit in the committees also submitting to get helmets? Matthew explained, for those of you, there's is it NCDOT offers community organizations, nonprofit groups, and others free bicycle helmets for distribution. And Matthew said that typically there are several organizations in town, including the city, that apply and then pool together and distribute helmets. Is there benefit in the BPAC also applying to get additional helmets for distribution? Was part of my question. The second part is, once you have the helmets, to make sure that we are involved and able to help volunteer distribute those.
Yeah, 100%. So right now, I think we've got about 7 groups that we've been able to get about 100 helmets apiece. And primarily a lot of those distributions are going through the school system, coinciding with the Safe Routes to School program. And, we've got in Wake Forest Baptist used to provide a lot of the helmets, the finances to purchase these helmets. But with all the changes in Atrium and just, they're still kind of working out budgets and stuff. So the past 2 years, we've actually been underfunded to provide helmets to all the schools. And there's needs outside of the school system as well. So yeah, I think any additional helmets we could bring to our community would be great, because they're all being distributed. I mean, by the end of the year, they're all gone, and we're having to still not provide helmets to some of the groups Yeah, and in communication to get involved, yeah, that can absolutely be done.
Okay.
You know, and you could choose, obviously you're in control. If the committee wants to submit an application and get 100 helmets, then you can kind of designate, where the NCDOT just asks that you report where they went, and it's real simple. I mean, you just let them know where they're going, and they're excited to receive that. And I think all the funding for that comes from the license plate tags that say support, safe roads or whatnot. I'm sure some of us might have that on tags or not, but I think that's where that funding comes from.
Okay, that's nice.
Greg, you might have some more input. Looks like you were thinking something.
Yeah, I was just going to say real briefly, one of the things I'm involved with is the Christmas in the City program that happens every December at the Benton Convention Center, and I'm involved with the Cycle Recycle group. Chester David has been leading that, and one of the things that we've been doing, and the purpose of Cycle Recycle, is to take donated bikes, fix them up, and make them safe and as attractive as possible, but essentially give them away at this gift mark that happens every December at the Benton Convention Center. And part of that is to fit the bikes with the kids. The people can go and select what bike they want. They pay a very small fee for that, but then also to give those people that take a bike a helmet that would be appropriate either for an adult or for a child. So we have been purchasing helmets and actually donating those and giving those away as part of the bike giveaway program. That's one thing I've been involved with. It's sort of parallel to what Michael's talking about here, is purchasing helmets. And we've been storing some of the extra ones in a storage facility off of Jonestown Road, where we have other materials there. So I've been very pleased and proud to be a part of that program the last 3 years, is to help provide funding to purchase the helmets and be involved with the actual rehabilitation of the bicycles themselves.
Thank you.
And Sharon, did you get sent that link to apply for that?
I just sent it to Joshua. I can send it to everyone if you'd like.
No, I have it. I just wanted to make sure you had the link to the application.
I do. Mm-hmm. Yep, I'll submit for us. And I was just typing, do you know if Piedmont Environmental Alliance applies, or any idea?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'll send it to them.
I actually am meeting with them in the next week or two to talk about the Year of the Trail. So I could definitely ask them about that.
Okay. I'll send it to them as well, since they kind of absorb Cycling Advocacy Network. And I think the more times they hear it, the better. But, Year of the Trail, thank you for mentioning that. That needs to be part of our conversation as we develop our work plan. And I'd love for you to share back with us any ideas that come out of that. I will reach out to Piedmont Land Trust, Legacy Trails, and get kind of highlights on what they're planning to do as well, that I'll have to share at our February meeting.
I apologize. I'm reading with the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, not the
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Piedmont Legacy Trails, Piedmont
Yes.
Triad Regional Council, Piedmont Environmental Network.
Yes.
Okay. Still good. I'll send to Piedmont Environmental Alliance, and I'll reach out to Legacy Trails, but the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, PTRC, will also be part of Legacy Trails. Anyway, we'll pull all that together in February. Yep. Okay, anything else before we wrap up? It's 10:05.
I have a few items actually, just related to clarifying questions that were raised. The first is, related to rates and scooters. So I pulled up Spin's application from this latest cycle. So I have real numbers for you now. Regular rates, it's $1 to start or unlock plus 35 cents per minute. To all users, this pricing is displayed in the app in real time so they can check as they're riding, and they can check before the start of their ride. They know that it'll be $1 to unlock and 35 cents per minute. Okay. What we do also have is the equitable pricing option that I mentioned, and that's called Spin Access. And so under that, the current and proposed Spin Access rate for scooters and bikes in Winston-Salem is 50 cents to unlock and 10 cents per minute. So fairly significant reductions there. Since the program's launched, this is from Spin. We have proudly offered Spin Access in Winston-Salem and are pleased to continue to do so. Spin Access provides guaranteed discounted fares to residents enrolled in local, state, or federal benefits programs, including but not limited to North Carolina Food and Nutrition Services, CIP, WIC, Medicaid, and so on. What is new now is additionally, they're pleased to offer something called access zones. What I mentioned there was if it detected that you were in a certain census block group, it may apply a discount. And so what that looks like is access zones, again, this is from Spin's application, provide a 25% discount to any rider who initiates a Spin trip in a specific geographical location of the service area. And we will work with the city, and they do, to utilize the already identified census tracts of the low and moderate income neighborhoods to determine the best locations for the access zones. I'll type all this up and send it your way at the conclusion of this meeting, but just wanted to make sure I gave you the precise numbers and wasn't just kind of shooting from the hip, as they say. So there you go.
Thank you. That's great. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you all. Great conversation. I'm excited about February and the next couple of years. I think we have a lot to build from and a lot of great momentum from this group. So I appreciate all of you.
Thanks, yes.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
Okay.
You too.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.